Okay, so my original idea with a vocab lesson was to have a PowerPoint and I was going to green screen myself onto it. Yeah, I don't know how to do that, but my partner reminded me that I keep saying I'm going to define words and then I just haven't been. So here, welcome back to NerdVine, where today in an off-scheduled video, we are tearing down some lexical barriers to make the world of wine feel a little more welcoming and inclusive. As I said in the past episodes, I keep promising I'm going to define these things, and now that time has come. So by no means is this lesson comprehensive. We are going to cover 11 terms. There are hundreds of wine-specific terms to cover, but these are just some basics I know I've mentioned or I will be mentioning soon. So in no particular order, let's develop some new vocabulary to help us speak the language of wine. Tannins. All right, tannin is a polyphenolic compound. Don't worry, that doesn't really matter to us, but it sounds really smart. And it is also astringent. So these tannins are what cause the drying feeling in your mouth. If you've ever used a facial astringent and your skin feels super dry afterwards, same idea, same kind of chemical reaction. I have heard this likened to licking a wool sock, which I think is super weird because I don't make a habit to lick socks of any material. So I usually liken it more to eating a Triscuit. If you've ever had a Triscuit and it just sucks all the moisture out of your mouth, that's that same feeling as tannins will give you. Tannins are found in seeds, stems, and skins, but seeds and stems tend to add a lot of bitterness, so those are usually strained out. We are usually referring to tannins coming from the skins. This is why white wines are low in tannins. They don't spend as much time with the skin, and now I'm realizing I should probably do a winemaking video anyway. So that is also why wines with thicker skins will have more tannin than the thinner skinned wines. So I don't know if you can hear Peaches. He is really interested in this video. He is screaming. Peaches is a cat, not a person. Acidity. Word 2. Acidity in wine typically comes from the tartaric acid, malic acid, or citric acid. You can determine whether a wine is higher or lower in acid using a couple different methods. Some people get a biting or sharp sensation in their sour glands here or here, like when you eat a sour candy. Sometimes it's more easily determined. Just use how much you salivate. I know, it's really sexy. But if a wine makes you drool, and especially if you just keep drooling, it's probably pretty high acid. The drooling reaction is especially helpful because a lot of sweet wines are actually very high in acid, so it's to balance the sweetness. So you won't necessarily get the sour candy feeling, but you will get the salivation. Acidity also plays a big role in food pairing, which we will discuss in a later video, as I keep promising. For both tannin and acid, if you experience a lot of dry mouth, whether due to medical conditions or a side effect of medication or whatever, I have a couple cheats for you, may or may not work. When you swish the wine around in your mouth, pay attention to how your gums feel. So a lot of times you can learn to feel the tannin level on your gums and teeth rather than trying to use your whole mouth or specifically your tongue. For acid, it might feel weird, but bite a lemon and really concentrate on any changes that take place in your mouth. Then look for a high acid Riesling or Sauv Blanc. You can always ask your friendly wine store person, and note any similar changes that happen in your mouth, even if they aren't quite as dramatic. Okay, off the cheats, back to the vocab. So I think this is word 3, I don't know. Body. Body can get really confusing because often people will say it's the weight of the liquid in your mouth, and that's a great place to start. There is some contention on if there are other vague factors to also count, like texture and richness. So here again, comparison is a great way to learn about body. Grab a Pinot Noir or a Beaujolais and a Cab Sauv or a Petit Syrah, and then taste them next to each other. Then you can move a little towards the middle. Compare, say, like a Carmenere to a Barbera. For my white drinkers, you can always grab a Riesling, which is your light body, and your Chardonnay, which is usually a very heavy or full body. And then you can move inward towards like a Chenin Blanc and a Gewürztraminer and just see the difference moving light versus heavy, and then medium light to medium heavy, and just see how it feels to you and come up with your own understanding of body. Essentially just drink a lot, try a lot, as I always say. All right, red fruits. We typically think of cherries and strawberries. Don't forget raspberries, cranberries, red plums. That one was easy. Black fruits, a little more complex sometimes. You're probably thinking blackberries, but we usually also put blueberries in this category, so why not? And then you also have black cherries and black plums. A lot of reds and blacks. Plus black currant. So yeah, what the heck is black currant, you're asking? I know. So there was like this long period of restrictions when we didn't have black currants in the US. Hopefully eventually I'll have like people worldwide watching this, and like maybe you lucky folks will be rolling your eyes and you'll have had some. But for this US audience or the US audience or whatever, there's a researcher actually who estimates only 0.1% of US citizens have ever had a black currant. So you can buy them online, not shocking, and they're said to be high in antioxidants, so you can learn about wine and boost your health simultaneously. At some point I'll talk more about learning to smell smells. Anyway, next term, aromatic. So usually this has to do with floral, herbal, citrus notes. Floral is usually the first thing people think of when they think of aromatic grapes, and some examples can include Gewürztraminer, Albarino, Riesling. We're looking specifically for notes like orange blossom, elderflower, rose, maybe even lavender. Aromatic grapes are almost always fermented in stainless steel or inert vessels because these aromas are very fragile, and you also don't usually want to decant these wines because those aromatics can blow off pretty easily. So you want to keep them in the bottle, contain them, imprison them. Okay, next term, surli. So lees is the term for the spent or dead yeast cells that still exist after the yeast eats the sugar and creates the alcohol. They just all kind of fall to the bottom. Wines that spend time sur lie or on the lees will demonstrate flavors of pastry crust, toast, biscuit, essentially any bready flavors that one honestly might expect because it's literally yeast. You'll hear lees a lot with champagne and a decent amount with Chardonnay. So were you to take the same champagne and either give it time sur lie or not, you would either get lots of fresh fruits, or you'd get vague images of, say, like, oh, this makes me think of apple tart when you're tasting it, because the lees can really impart a lot of that flavor. I, for one, love champagne that has spent a lot of times, think 24 or more months with these little yeasty bad boys. But as always, there's no right or wrong here, and if you keep tasting wine and thinking like, ew, why does this taste like toast? Maybe look for wines that don't spend time sur lie. All right, next term, malolactic fermentation or conversion. I talk about this a lot with my friends, and yes, I am super fun at parties. So malolactic conversion is the process of using bacteria to convert naturally occurring malic acid in the grape juice to lactic acid. Malic acid is the acid that gives green apples their tartness, and lactic acid is the acid found in milks and yogurts. If you are lactose intolerant, please do not panic. This is the acid, not the sugar, that we're dealing with here, so you should be fine. So this conversion can impart some nice buttery flavors, although oftentimes those actually come from the aging in the barrels. But really what it primarily gives you is that creamy mouthfeel to some wines you may have had. So red wines nearly always undergo malolactic conversion, and for white wines, it has to be grapes that can actually handle this process. So lots of rich, heavy mouthfeel Chardonnays have undergone this conversion. I feel like I had a malolactic something that surprised me recently. And in case you can't tell from how fast I'm talking, I've had a lot of coffee and not a lot of sleep, so I don't remember what it was. Okay, terroir. Brace yourselves because there's no actual definition for this. It's French. And much like the French expression je ne sais quoi, which literally means I don't know what, as in this wine has a certain indescribable je ne sais quoi. Terroir is an abstract concept that loosely means like a sense of place. I think it was in my WSET class, I think it was the woman next to me, we just decided it was like the everything. The vineyard, the makers, the beliefs of the makers, the harvesting process, everything about a wine, both the place and everything else, is part of terroir. So you may want to look up some other definitions, just a few of them, and see like what resonates with you. But I like to think that terroir is the place and also includes like a desire for sustainable practices and all that other jazz that gets me kind of excited. Appellation, on the other hand, is the actual geographic location where grapes are grown. So this is where we can start getting into AOCs and DOCGs, and that I really will save for another video because, oh my gosh, it's a lot. But if you want to talk about the place and like the climate and the weather, you're much more talking about appellation than terroir. Oxidation, particularly oxidizing versus oxidating. I was gonna end on appellation, but I actually messed this up on my WSET exam. So awkward and so embarrassing because I remembered in the middle of the night, like after the evening exam, it's like 2 a.m. I sat up in bed and I went, no! Okay, anyway, that's my nerd story. Oxidation is something that is usually prompted in the wine, so that creates like a nutty, appley, yummy flavors. Oxidized wine, that's a fault, where too much oxygen exposure can give you these like damp cardboard aromas. Okay, I think 11 words for this episode is probably good. I talked fast. I think you can slow things down on YouTube, so maybe slow it down a little. But I cannot wait to nerd out with you in future lessons. Maybe I'll even learn how to use a green screen. And if you are curious what I am drinking today, I got this La Crema Purpura Blanco Seco. I was looking for a light, refreshing wine because it's been so hot here. It is good, especially for being $5, but it is a lot sweeter than I expected. If you want to drink some blue sweet tarts and maybe some blue Jolly Ranchers, this is the wine for you. So, I don't know. I think it's growing on me. Until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe so that all of these off-schedule videos will pop up for you. And cheers.